You are wrong so many levels.
I was looking at some of those houses, like out west, right by my house.
No, you're fine. Danny's fine.
Ay, bendito.
Good afternoon. I would like to call the meeting of May 29th of the Board of Directors of Miami Expressway Authority to order. Welcome, everybody. Glad that you didn't have rain coming over here. Ms. Gutierrez, would you lead the pledge, please? Luisa?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Jimenez, Ms. Gutierrez, Mr. Martinez, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Walters, Treasurer Board, Secretary Wolf,
Here.
Vice Chair Edmondson, Chair Fano. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. At this time, are there any additions or edits to the agenda?
Madam Chair, yes, there is. There's just as there's an item in your purple agenda. It's just a meeting agenda for IBTTA. There will be an item, a consent item, to approve my travel to the Board of Directors meeting in June. That's it.
Mr. Counsel, can you put that in at the appropriate time? And then we'll be meeting, have a shade meeting at the end of our meeting. Thank you. Mr. Saldiva?
Declaration of voting conflicts. Do any members of this board have to report any conflicts with any items on the agenda? Seeing none, we move forward.
At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make a citizen's comment. None? We'll move along on the agenda. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the summary minutes from the meeting of April 24th.
Move. Ooh, sorry.
All those in favor? Passed. Thank you very much.
I apologize. It's a little louder than I thought the microphone would be.
Mr. Executive Director.
Madam Chair, thank you, and good afternoon. My report today is a status on a number of different projects. The first one is the 83611, or what we've known to refer to it as a Signature Bridge project. I reported last month that the project was moving forward. I can report this month that contracts have been sent to the contractor. We await a notice to proceed so that we can proceed. This last week, there was a story written on the MDX portion of the project, the double deck. There will be another story written in the near future about the impacts, or what the concept is on the eastern side of the project. We're excited on that, and we will coordinate. The project as it stands, the proposal and what we'll sign a contract with is actually going to impact less properties. We had already started our right-of-way program years ago. This particular proposal And this particular alternative is going to reduce some of those impacts, especially in the area of 17th Avenue and the river. So we will update the board at appropriate times. The Kendall Parkway, 836 extension. We're planning to have a follow-up meeting with homeowners on 167th Avenue. This is planned for June 7th. It's going to be a follow-up to show them the new alignment where the authority was able to work with the county and move the alignment a little bit further west, away from 167th Avenue. That'll be on June 7th. We'll report back to the board on how that progresses. June 20th, the Board of County Commission will consider transmittal of the agenda item to Tallahassee for amendment to the Comprehensive Development Master Plan. Staying on Kendall Parkway, this month has been an active month. We briefed Senator Annette Tadeo on the project. It was a very good meeting. Her constituents have been calling her office, asking for information on the project. A lot of the constituents are interested in moving that project forward. We also briefed staff from Congressman Carlos Curbello's office. It was interesting, they also called for a meeting because their constituents had been calling the district office to see what the congressman can do to expedite the project. Our comment to the staff of the congressman was that right now there's nothing. We're not looking for federal funding or state funding, but when the project's approved, we will be looking for federal permits, at which time we can count on the congressman's, and not only his, but the entire delegation support to expedite the issuance of those contacts. On May 15th, Secretary Wolf and I, as well as Eileen Bouclet and Alice Bravo, participated on a panel discussion with the Latin Builders Association to give them an update on the status of the SMART plan. I also want to thank, and I know they're not here, A.J. Meyer and Board Member Carlos Jimenez for their participation at Team Florida meeting. We hosted it in May. It was well received for the innovation that we're looking at and the technologies that we're looking at moving forward. Board members, June 11th has been confirmed by Florida's Turnpike Enterprise and the toll agencies as the go-live date for the new back office. The Centralized Customer Service Center will go live on June 11th. Emails and notices have been sent out to all of the customers that have a SunPass, and those that don't will also be getting notification on the websites. We're putting links on our website to the DOT's website. Airports, anybody who's going to the airport during the crossover period has to pay attention because there will be no customer service during those 5 or 6 days. And Madam Chair, if I can address the TPO issues now, I would love to do it. We've been working with TPO staff on program priorities. This year, what we've decided to do with, at the behest of the TPO is spell out specifically on the program priorities where MDX is participating. So there will be a document presented to the TPO that will show that the MDX has taken over the East-West Corridor and its extension into the Kendall Parkway. It'll spell out how much money we've invested in the past and what we've committed to in the 5-year work program moving forward. Same thing will happen with the Dolphin Park and Ride. Same thing will happen on 878 with the ramps to the Dadeland Garage in support of the express bus service on 874 and the Florida's Turnpike. With that, I think we're moving forward. We've made a commitment of over $50 million towards the SMART plan, and it's going to be documented in the work program, moving forward, this year moving forward. In your packets, if I may, in your packets, I just want to make sure that everybody's received a letter from Representative Brian Avila to the board. I emailed it as soon as I received it, and we made copies, hard copies, and placed it in your folders for today. He takes exception that we have not implemented the law that passed in July of 2017, House Bill 1049, asking for immediate reduction of toll rates and other considerations. You can read it for yourselves.
If I may.
Ms. Gutierrez?
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing this letter up. I don't see what's the delay that we're not addressing the discount. We already know a plan that we want to discount, and it would be conforming with the situation. Why don't we activate right now and call the question and get a second to immediately go in and implement the discount? We've already discussed it at committee. We know what the plan is. We know what the loss is. Why aren't we doing it now? Why do we have to receive a letter from a representative saying that we're not following the law? We are abiding citizens. We know what we can offer as a discount to this community, and we also know what we can't do. So why don't we do it now? And the discount is very easy. It's the non-peak, the off-peak, Monday through Sunday. It is the perfect discount to start immediately. You start now, and it's a pilot program, and we see what else we can do as we move forward. We know it's going to hurt some programs, but you know, we're at odds here. We're at odds because this letter fails to mention that that law also requires a CPI increase. And the CPI increase is an annual increase. I don't agree with that, but I do agree with offering a discount, and we know what we could offer. We could offer Saturdays and Sunday, non-peak. Let's do it, and let's do it now. Madam Chair, why don't you call the question? Let's call the question.
Well, I haven't heard a motion, to be honest with you.
You would have to instruct attorney, and we could immediately address this, because we should not continue to leave this without a response. The response is we conform. We have a transfer agreement. We're following our transfer agreement. We've gone out to bond. We know what that money is dedicated for. We have done everything we're supposed to. Yet these letters and written information in the newspaper, you know, let's be frank. The paper will hold anything you put on it, and it may not be the facts. And obviously, both of these situations have not reported the total facts because we are against the CPI. Can we please address the discount? Because we do agree in offering relief, as much as relief that we can. Right now is the perfect moment to do it. Now.
Thank you,
And not
Ms.
let this
Gutierrez.
right.
I appreciate and honor and respect everything you said, but frankly, we're in the middle of the executive director's report.
No better time than to add it on the agenda, Madam Chair.
I understand what you're saying, but I think we'd need a motion for that. We just can't arbitrarily put something on the agenda.
Okay, then I will do the following, please. Thank you. Would you allow me?
You have the floor.
Can you please craft the language right now of what it needs to be, of what I'm referring to? So there is the language that we can make a motion, and I will move that motion, and I need a second, because we need to address the discount program. And all I'm talking about is the 5% as it was demonstrated to us of what we can do. You got it?
And-
Well, I need the specifics. I think Marie would have the specifics.
Marie?
I believe the action item was the implementation of the non-peak hours by 5%. I'm going to have to go back and research which option that was. I apologize.
For the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. We can start at the very bottom. This program can then increase as we see the finances progress.
Okay. So the action item would be the implementation of the non-peak hours for 5%.
And this 5% actually goes to every user of the system.
Okay. So we're going to add that to the agenda? Is that? Okay.
Exactly. So we have a first, we have a second. Now we can have
Let's have a discussion.
abundance of healthy discussion.
Good, thank
Who
you.
would like to open the discussion?
Just for the record, it's the implementation of non-peak hour 5% discount on weekends. Is that correct?
Correct.
Evenings.
Evenings, the way Marie stated it.
Okay.
Mr. Board.
To all fellow board members, I think that before we take a matter like this as a response to a letter that we just received a few hours ago, without the proper documentation to understand the implications, the cost of implementing the discount, and the consequences that it might have to the budget, I would suggest that we all get informed again, because I believe that that discussion item came and went.
It didn't.
All right.
It was
But-
tabled
Great. It was tabled. That's why,
for further discussion.
right. So that's what I interpreted as went. That it didn't find support at that time. But I would suggest that if we're going to have a discussion like that, that we all receive the proper documentation, it gets circulated, and everybody with a cool and calm head can make that decision. But impromptu, just as a reaction, what I have found in my life is that when I typically just react, I find regret as a consequence to those type of positions. So I would encourage everybody to calm down a little bit. Let's review the numbers and then decide what we want to do.
Thank
There
you.
are more than one option, right?
Thank you, Mr. Board. Although, and I don't mean to disagree with you, but I believe we did have a healthy discussion at that meeting, and we decided to go back to staff for them to give us additional information. It didn't just win. I just want to be sure that we're all on the same page. Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you, and if I may add, it was not only a healthy discussion that day, but we've gotten a full analysis twice in 2 committee meetings of what exactly the program would be. And this would be a pilot program. And my suggestion is that we start at the very lowest of it, which we saw the numbers, and it was a cost of $2 million. Anything bigger than that would need further discussion on what it would do. But let me just remind everybody, last week we had a savings of $3 million that we went back onto the budget and reconformed the budget based on that. Very easily, that savings can be used for this precise moment in time. You know, it's like, why are we kicking the problem down the street and continue to kick it down the street? How many times are we going to discuss it when we've known this situation for more than a year? We've known it for more than a year, and it keeps coming back and regurgitating. I think receiving this letter, it's not that I'm emotional. This is typical me, ladies and gentlemen. I am like this. I'm a Hispanic. I was born there, and when I get excited, this is exactly the way I am. I dance to the tune of merengue. That's exactly me. And what I'm saying is, we need to address this situation now. We should not wait any further. The community deserves a discount. This is the discount we can't afford to give them without any hesitation, without further discussion. And today is the day. Let's do it now. What are we waiting for?
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Any other comments? Secretary Wolf, please.
Yes, I know the resolution has not yet been crafted, although you're writing over there. Once we get to that point, my first question would be, if this motion is passed and we do that, will that comply with the statute? And will that be deemed to comply with the statute? And similar to Mr. Board, acting without that knowledge and passing something that in fact will still leave us at the next meeting trying to catch up is not the way to go. I also think the CPI issue is not entirely resolved. I believe it requires that to be included to be compliance with the statute. And further, I personally don't see a problem with CPI. I think it's a very rational, reasonable approach. So that's something that I would also like to see come to a vote. So I guess the thrust of my discussion is, yes, let's be deliberate about this, and let's have a motion that we can get a clear statement of, yes, this complies with the statute, or no, this does not comply for these reasons.
Secretary Wolf, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. The reason I seconded Ms. Gutierrez's motion is, quite frankly, this isn't a new event. Yes, this letter might be new, but we've been talking about this for a year. If you all recall, one of the things I discussed on my last day was a workshop that if we were not going to do new projects was to start to reduce the tolls incrementally based upon that. That position has not changed. we can't have two separate votes. The way the statute is written, I don't think we are required to support, if the legislation is law, then the CPI is implemented with or without a vote from us, because that decision is made by the legislature. The issue relating to the toll decrease is related to us at this point, because we have been in question on whether or not we were going to legally challenge the law. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, this is not a new issue. This is an issue that we've been discussing for a year. The legislation that is being mentioned was enacted and passed last year. There was an amendment done to it this year that indicated some penalties for not moving forward. We have had multiple discussions about this. I believe staff has indicated to us that if we implement this law, it's going to affect our work program. But it is very clear, based upon this letter and everything else that is called with our legislators in Tallahassee, they are not concerned about whether or not projects are going to be affected. They are only concerned about whether or not there's going to be a reduction in the tolls. So for them, it's a greater concern that we reduce the tolls by 3 cents per gantry, which is really what this is about. So what I actually would like to do, Ms. Gutierrez, if you're the requirement of the legislation is a 5 to 10% reduction. We're talking 3.5. If they really want to do this, let's go for the full Monty. Let's go for 10% reduction and start reducing some of our work programs that have, because it's clear that is not of any. Well, my concern here is if there's not a concern for the projects by our legislators, then we need to, and we are an entity of the state to a certain degree because half of us are appointed by them, then it's time for us to start, let's start making a reduction that's going to make a difference. Because that's really what's been going on. The debate here is real simple. It's either going to be projects with CPI, it's either going to be a longer period for projects to be completed because of CPI, or we're going to continue to run around like hamsters on a wheel. So I agree with her that let's do what we can now, and if it doesn't comply, we can make further movements later. But we can't keep talking about this because we're either going to challenge the law or we're going to start following the law, because we can't keep talking about what we're going to do. And that's what we've done for months, one or the other.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Gutierrez.
there's two things. First, I'm going to address what the secretary has said and also what Member Martinez has said. And secondly, what I want to ask the attorneys to weigh in, because the attorneys have told us time and time again what is steps moving forward. I think at this time what's important is it's to again repeat the following. What we've seen, what has been presented to us, what we can afford to do at this time, what will not modify the work program, what will not hurt any of the jobs currently committed to, what will not hurt us moving forward, is if we immediately vote on what we can do. And what we can do and what we've analyzed and what we've studied is a 5% discount on the off-peak hours. We can do that and we can afford it because even the budget in itself that we addressed it last week had that savings. So we're just basically taking that savings and funding this discount program. So that way we can conform at least with what's on the table with the statute. You know, I don't agree with the CPI. The CPI is a perpetual toll increase on an annual basis. That is a cash cow that is unneeded. It's unneeded. It may be the way the Turnpike does its business because it's somewhere that nobody knows in this community where they are. Perhaps that's the way it is. Perhaps, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, and no disrespect, that is also the way FDOT does. But we live here in Miami-Dade. We are resident citizens of this community, and we need to be mindful of what they can't afford. And it's being disingenuous to go in and say, oh, let's give this community a discount, and then go and on the back end, which they never see, the CPI increase, which goes on an annual basis forever and ever. And it's automatic, because our rules are we have public hearings. In this case, we wouldn't even have public hearings, because it would go automatic. I am saying, let's stop talking about it. Let's stop thinking about it. Let's act on it, and let's give this community that 5%. Let's satisfy a portion of that law that we all agree that is a good thing as a conformity. I'm not saying as following, because at some point something else has to occur for us to address what the legislators have brought in as a bill, as a statute, okay? Either we are independent, either we do have a transfer agreement and this expressway was not free, okay? Or they're violating that. And since we're not going to address that now, let's address with the portion that I believe almost everybody here, if not everybody here, would like to give something back to this community. Now's the time. Let's give that 5%. We have it in the budget, so why not?
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. We have a first and we have a second. Mr. Saldiva, could you?
I think Mr. Mayor won.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose we're talking about the legislation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I ask the attorney to repeat what this legislation is and what it is asking us to do, and what are the consequences of this board not complying with it?
Well, are you House Bill 141, the 2018 bill or 2017 bill? My opinion is that on 2017, we complied because any reduction in toll rate was subject to the savings clause, and they were specifically put in there to respect our bond documents. The 2018 basically says, if you don't do it, I'm going to remove everybody on the board. What that creates...
Don't do what?
If you don't reduce it 5%, but they're not specific on what to reduce or how to reduce or anything else. They said 5%. Now,
What does that mean, 5%? Because Ms. Gutierrez seems to think that 5% off-peak complies. To me, I'm not sure that 5% off-peak complies with that requirement.
There's no definition of the 5%.
I reduce it for 5% for 1 second. You're telling me you think that complies?
For 1 second?
1 second.
No, I
But
don't
from
think that would
12
comply.
From 12 o'clock midnight to 12 o'clock and 1 second midnight, we reduce it 5%. I don't think
Certainly
that
can
that's
make that argument, but I don't think it's going to be a winner.
Okay.
Okay, so but what the problem is that based on the 2018 legislation, it has caused our bond counsel to say,
Sir, I didn't ask you that question. I didn't ask you that question. I asked you a specific question. I know what I ask, okay? So I asked you, what does the law say? What does it ask us to do? That's the question.
reduce the toll rates between, are you talking about 1049 or 141?
The one we're talking about right now, I guess.
Well, I was talking,
We're talking about both. You believe that we complied with what happened in 2017.
I do.
And I think that because of what we did or didn't do in 2017, the legislature came back in 2018 to make us do something else, all right? Because obviously they didn't think we did very much. So the 2018 law, what does it tell us, what does it say, and what does it say we have to do? Or if we don't do it, we're going to be removed. That one I got really clear.
Yes.
All right, so what does it say that
Has
we must do?
reduced the toll rates by 5%,
Okay.
or else.
And does it
All board
also
members
ask
will
us...
be removed, except
does-
for the district secretary.
I understand. Does it also ask us to increase toll, implement a CPI?
Not for 141.
It does not.
No.
Where does that come from?
That comes from the bill in 2017.
The previous year.
Yes, sir.
So we can comply with 2018 simply by voting to reduce tolls by 5%.
Well, you're compliant, but that's not going to relieve your problem of funding, which is,
I guess you don't listen to me. Did I ask that question?
no, I do listen to you.
Okay. Well, respond to the question that I ask.
Okay,
Okay? You remember the question I asked?
yeah.
Okay.
What does the bill ask us? Is reduce the toll rate by 5%, but it doesn't specify what they're talking about.
In plain English, what do you think that means?
In plain English?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if somebody
mean-
says that you have to reduce your tolls by 5%,
Well,
it means to me that you reduce the tolls by 5%. It doesn't mean you reduce the tolls by 5% for a period of time or a specific time of the day. It means you reduce your tolls 5%.
Yeah, reduce the toll rates by 5%.
Okay.
But technically, our toll rate out there on 836 is $1.40. If you have valid sum passes, which is in the law, it's only 70 cents. So really, it's not It doesn't say you reduce your toll rate right now an additional 5%.
I believe, sir, that if any person looking at that would mean that if you're charging $1 on a crane, on a gantry, that you're now charging 95 cents. And if you're charging 25 cents for the SunPass folks, now you charge, 24 cents. That's what I believe that means. I mean, that would seem logical to me. And if you argued otherwise, it would seem illogical.
Well, if you go through our gantry and you don't have a valid SunPass, it's $1.40. If you have a valid SunPass, it's 70 cents. So therefore, we've already given a 70%, a 50% reduction.
Sir, that, again, that doesn't, to me, pass the smell test. It doesn't. They ask you to reduce it 5%. So if it's $1.40, what's 5% of $1.40? And if your SunPass is 70 cents, then it's what's 5% of 70 cents? There's your new rate. You're done. And then you know what? That passes the smell test to me. To argue otherwise is to invite, really complicate the matter and invite the possibility of the state saying you did not comply with what we said, and therefore you will be removed from office. And you know what? I don't want to put ourselves at risk, because the next folks that are going to be here are going to comply with the law anyway, or else they're going to be removed too. All right? So I think if all we've been asked to do now is to reduce the 5%, I'm all in with you. I'm fine. Although I want to do it for reduce it 24 hours a day. And if part of the law is not to increase the CPI, is that one of the things that could cause us to be removed?
That's not addressed in House Bill 141.
Okay, so we simply reduce it by 5%, and then we go and fight the 2017 law and say that we don't want to do that. Right? We can do that?
You're totally in your prerogative.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor,
Clear
just-
as mud now.
Thank you, sir. Just for your reference, we had a motion and a second on the floor. I'm going to ask the attorney to read it back to you for your information.
You had it on the blue one. It was a motion to implement non-peak 5% rate reduction Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., all day Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, sir.
On the motion.
We can call the
Want
motion.
this off-peak, what is it, off-peak 5%?
I don't-
No, I'm saying, what's the motion, off-peak?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure that I can, okay, I think a friendly amendment? Okay, my amendment is that we impose a 5% reduction on tolls on the MDX Expressway system.
Across the board. So that's the amendment to your motion. Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, I'll admit to not knowing the details of what's in the statute, but my recollection was that it was a requirement for 5% reduction for SunPass customers, but you've indicated it is all customers.
SunPass users.
SunPass users
customers.
only.
Would be toll by plate.
But the board has a policy that the toll by plate is 50%. It's based upon the SunPass rate. So if you reduce the SunPass rate, you either have to change the policy or you would have to also decrease the toll by plate customers as well. So it's the entire customer.
But the 5% requirement is solely for SunPass customers.
Correct, but you would have to change your policy to say that the toll by plate customers are not based upon the SunPass rates.
For clarification purposes, Mayor, you're amending it 5%
SunPass
for the
is 50%
SunPass
less than
customers, because
toll by plate.
otherwise we need to go back and change policy. That would be a whole separate motion, whole
No.
separate conversation. No? So it would be across to the SunPass also? I mean, the toll by plate, excuse me.
I think what she said was our policy is, it's uniform, right? SunPass and non-SunPass, right?
So we don't have to change policy.
And would affect toll by plate and SunPass customers.
Perfect, so then it's across the board. Your board.
Can we understand the financial implications of reducing the 5%? I think we have a gentleman in the back, Randy. Randy?
So before Randy responds, I had our traffic and
Thank
revenue
you.
consultants do the analysis. So the revenue reduction is $15.7 million, and it's roughly around 6.2%, and the reason is that when you have a gantry, you have to round down. So some gantries are 6%, and some gantries, you can't be 4.8%. In order to be compliant to law, you have to be 5 or more percent, because it's half a penny and so forth. So it's about $15.7 million on a revenue impact. Randy, do you want to speak to the financing component of it?
Thank you, Randy.
If looking at 5% reduction on the plan, it has a $140 million impact. Let me pull up all the numbers. We lose additional amount on pay-as-you-go, so we'd have to fund an additional $127,309. Our coverages will drop to approximately 1.4, assuming that we keep the same ratings. That is a very big assumption, and it's a very aggressive assumption. And we'd have to sell 182.66 million more in bonds to complete the existing program as outlined, assuming the interest rates were there. The 1.4 coverage is not shut all the doors type ratings, but it will have an impact almost immediately from the rating agencies.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mayor?
Question, are we assuming that we are continuing our rebate program?
That didn't come into the discussion.
Okay, so there's no more rebate program, right?
This
No
plan
discussion
never
about that.
has a rebate in it, only if you have a surplus at the end of the year.
Okay, just asking, thanks.
Mr. Martinez?
Well, Counsel, the legislation suggested, was it a fixed 5%? Or did they suggest a range for reduction?
The 18 legislation said 5%,
Was it the 17 that had a range between 5 to 10?
5 to 10.
Okay, thank you.
One more question.
Mr. Board?
Lord.
Randy, how many increases would you have to have further years 2 and 3 after you consider a discount like this, to cover the loss? I mean, simple math, I'm asking a simple math question because obviously if you're just going down 5%, then 2 increases of 2+ will get you there.
Well, from
but-
strictly a mathematical,
Yes.
2 will get you back to about the same place, but you have to make up for the amount of money you lost. So it comes out to about 3 CPI adjustments.
2 years at 3%, more or less.
I would say 3 years.
3 years.
3 years to help offset the reduction that you're losing during the first few
Right.
years. That's
Last
close. It's not an exact amount. You might be able to do something a little less than.
Last
CPI.
question. Could you repeat the amount of money that we would lose throughout the program? It'd be 147 million?
Okay, there's so many numbers.
Yeah, no, I got it.
What we
And you
lose-
knew that we were going to call you this afternoon, so you're
I-
very well prepared.
I ran a lot of different options.
Right.
That I can do thumbnails in between just because there's so many different variables. But you actually lose $127.3 million of your pay-as-you-go money on strictly the 5% reduction. If there's any other diversion, then it's a bigger number.
And the last question would be, do you think that it will be easy for us, by providing this discount, to get the qualified bonding lawyer's opinion to produce the financing to cover that hole?
I'm not qualified to give legal opinions.
Carlos, can I hear you then?
We rely on outside counsel for that, but the thrust of his opinion is that the the issue is not the actual discount, it's the actually autonomy of the board to set rates. And, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What was explained to me, I'll try to go through it. It's not the 2018 bill that's stopping us from being able to issue debt. It's the 2017 bill that's stopping us from getting a clean opinion. Now, the 2017 bill had several saving clauses in it. I want to bifurcate the discussion between credit and a clean opinion. The clean opinion has to deal with our flow of funds and the sanctity of the overall document when that goes through. There is several problems with it that precluded him from giving a clean opinion on the way they drafted the bill. The actual creditworthiness going forward, because it impacts your ability to issue new debt with your current indenture, because they actually stated in the bill that bonds going forward would be subject to this because of the savings clause, and the ones that were issued prior to it would be exempt from this myriad of transaction bills. Again, I apologize, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just going by what was explained to me. So when we get down to it, we have two issues. The ability to get a clean opinion to even issue bonds without some extraordinary measures, which would be so expensive that would stop our programs. If we can get a clean opinion, then we have, as the mayor pointed out in the last meeting, a credit perspective that we'd have to go to the rating agencies with a whole new credit that would be subject to their interpretation, and what would the ratings be in our cost of funds at that point.
But that's a question mark, right?
That's a complete question mark.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. I'm going,
One more question. I want to clarify one thing.
Mr. Martinez.
Council,
We
just
also
to
have
be-
a friendly
just to be
amendment.
clear, we are not required under the 2018 law to support any CPI increase, that is in the 2017. And if we don't do that, as of right now, there is no ability for the governor or the legislation to remove us from the board, if we just, correct?
There's no provision in there that says that you have to use to implement CPI in the 2018 law.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Otherwise, I'm going to call the question. Secretary Wolf.
I just want to be sure, one thing that I have it right. There was a friendly amendment that said this applies 24 hours a day. And is that what we are voting on?
Going to have council read it into the record before we vote.
And I would still like to have just a clearer yes or no. Will this comply with the 2018 statute?
The amendment will, what Mayor Jimenez proposed, because he proposed,
And will comply with this statute?
yes, that he proposed 5% cut right across the board.
Thank you. Maria Luisa, could you please call a verbal vote? Thank you.
Mayor Jimenez.
Well, 1 second. Could you read the motion to be sure? Thank you, sorry.
The motion would be to implement a 5% reduction in toll rates pursuant to House Bill 141.
And it is your opinion that that complies with the bill?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's exactly what it says.
Thank you. Okay, Maria Luisa, okay, sir?
Why do we have to reference the bill?
No, it was just a
You don't-
clarification, sir.
Okay, so, but you
So could
referenced
you
the
just say
bill
the-
pursuant to whatever conforming.
The motion
I
again,
just
please,
asked for a
Carlos.
5% reduction.
Yes, so
We
it
may
would
be
be
conforming, but
implement
I'm
a
not-
5%
It's an
reduction.
independent action of the board.
Well,
Exactly.
because, the only reason I said that is because they add in there about having a valid Sun Pass. So,
Yep, so we're acting independently.
Madam Chair?
Sir,
I want this board to act independently.
Correct?
so could you, it was a motion from, well, first, Ms. Gutierrez made a motion, the mayor amended it without any reference to any other outside party.
okay,
This is an
implement a 5%
independent
toll
decision.
rate cut on all tolls on MDX roadways.
Is there an effective date?
Would you like to add an effective date, Mayor?
Oh,
Effective
Mr.
immediately?
Executive Director, what date makes sense to you?
July 1, that's fine. July 1, it could be done, Mr. Mayor, it actually could be done immediately, correct?
July 4.
Independence.
We will.
July 1. Is that your fiscal year, July?
Also have to make
July 1st?
changes to all
Yeah.
of the signage around the system
July
to
1st.
reflect it.
July
Everybody
1st.
good with that? So could you read the motion
Sure.
now?
Implement a
please?
5% toll rate reduction on all tolls on MDX roadways effective July 1st, 2018.
Thank you. Maria Luisa, your turn.
And that was,
Mayor Jimenez? Yes. Ms. Gutierrez? Yes. Mr. Martinez?
yes.
Board? No. Secretary Wolf?
Yes.
Ms. Fano?
Yes, it has passed. Thank you very much, you all. Back to the Executive Director's report.
I had concluded my report.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez.
Very good. It is important that the item be added to one of the committees, at least the next committee, so then we address the other statute and how we are going to argue it, fight it, whatever procedure we're going to take. And I also wanted to be clear, as the maker of the motion with the friendly amendment, we have done this independently to conform because we do believe in giving a discount. And I fully understand that now the budget has to be revisited and the work program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez.
And if I may,
Mr.
I
Martinez.
think it's important to note that we actually went beyond what the legislation required. The legislation only required us to do something relating to SunPass users. We actually included toll-by-plate people to receive the benefit as well. So we actually went a step beyond what the legislation did.
Point
So that is
made.
why we again acted as an independent board and not, we were in any way, other shape, or form. So let that also be noted, and that's why I supported both, I seconded both the original amendment and the original suggestion. Thank you.
I want to thank the board for this healthy discussion. I think it's been long in the coming, and I'm proud of us. Mr. General Counsel.
Yeah, how are you? Next steps regarding the legislation. We were presenting to all the board members our next steps. While we were briefing him, Mayor Jimenez, he recalled of a similar situation with the county that may be applicable to our situation to provide an alternate way to move forward. We're currently working with the county, and hopefully we'll have that wrapped up by the June board meeting. And the other item that I have next month, according to the bylaws, is our election. We will hold annual elections. We'll elect a chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary, and assistant secretary. Prior to the election, I will send out the rules of our MDX elections. That's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Board, will you be giving us the treasurer's report? Indeed, I will. Thank you, sir.
2 items on the report. Last week, we had a committee meeting, a joint committee meeting of operations and finance. And out of that committee came an endorsement for the 2018-2019 budget. Maria, I guess we'll have to make some changes to that one more time and maybe amend it somehow.
When you look at the budget, which is, I think, action item, the first action item, we have a $55.7 million operating budget.
Right.
And that includes the 2.9 for the park and ride. And then we have about 101 million for the capital program. So we would have a shortfall, roughly $15 million.
Right.
So I was just looking at the work program. I think the areas, most of the projects are under construction. I would think the right-of-way program is something that we probably could push out to the following year until we evaluate our funding mechanism going forward. So I will ask for the budget to be amended from 101 to the capital program to 85 million.
And, you know, I appreciate what you're doing, Marie, but I think we should table item A until the next meeting if we're going to have to get recalculation of the numbers. I think just reducing it by 15 million is sloppy work. I would.
we were there yet.
No, but I know she was suggesting doing that, so I just wanted to know where my position was, and I think we should table A when we get to that point. No disrespect to you, Marie, or to you, Mr. Board, but just simply saying reduce it from 100 to 85, I think we need to have a full gist of how that affects us.
No, I didn't pick the 15 out of the air.
No, I know you did, no, but I mean, just to have it, I'm in no way questioning your numbers at all, neither one of you. I just think we should have it in writing in front of us, so that's why I was suggesting we go down to that point.
No, I was going to do a follow-up. I think what we need
I
to
think I need
better
to finish my
understand what
report,
she
and
said.
then
Oh, I'm sorry,
everybody
that's
can
right.
have a
I apologize,
conversation
Mr. Ward.
about it.
I apologize. I thought you were done, Mr.
Yeah,
I
but-
apologize.
The numbers,
Yeah,
can she
so-
explain a little further what she means?
And Mr. Board, I
Let me
apologize.
finish that.
said it would have to be changed.
Finish, and then you all can talk.
I'm waiting for her to finish so I can finish. Anyway, easy. So the second item is simply that if you look at the budget update, the actual report of the actual financial report for April 30th, you'll see that the variants are all positive. We're getting more revenues than expected, and we're spending less money than expected. So I am done. Here, go ahead.
I wanted to address what Marie had stated, if she can further explain what it is that she wanted to change in terms of the numbers, to get a better comprehension of how the numbers are being shifted. Thank you.
Guys, I thought we went into action item on the annual budget. But the annual budget contemplates having the flow of funds go into the capital program. Since as we discussed at the workshop, we've exhausted all of our bond proceeds at this point in time. The only thing that we have on hand is the cash on hand plus the flow of funds. So we essentially have a $228 million capital program for fiscal 19, and we're looking at $101 million coming from the flow of funds.
105,
Now that we have a
Marie.
reduction.
105.
105, I apologize. Now that we have a reduction from the revenue, which we calculated at $15 million, that was something that we asked the traffic folks to work on. So either we have a shortfall, and we have to shift the work program to reduce our capital expenditures. And based upon the capital program, majority of the projects, construction projects, obviously that's not something you're going to stop, but things that have not started, such as the right-of-way program acquisition, that could be pulled back a little bit until the end of the fiscal year to evaluate how things are going, or push it to fiscal 20.
Thank you, Marie.
What right-of-way program? And what exactly are you going to stop or to delay?
Well, all of the projects that are on 836, obviously, we wouldn't touch any of those programs. There's one major project on 874, which I think there's still a right-of-way program to finish out that project that's under construction. I would think that 836-34 is something that has not started, and that's the project that is the ramp that goes into the park and ride. That's something that we would move forward. I understand that's an important project. But I think the right-of-way on 924 has not been completely purchased. And then for next year, they programmed about $14.9 million for next year on 92404, which is the extension west to the Homestead extension of Florida Turnpike. And that budget for next year is 14,849. So everything else is pretty minor that is actually still active. So I would think that would be the only item that we could probably look at shifting out towards the end of the year or into next fiscal year.
Thank you. One final comment is that now that we've had $15 million less in revenue, I don't think we need to look at just one place we're going to take it all out of. So I think we need another comprehensive look at the entire budget, including administration costs, et cetera, consultants, everything. I think everybody needs a haircut. So I would ask that be looked into and come back with a separate budget. Yeah, a lot of it can come out of right-of-way acquisition, but I think everybody should share in this.
Which is why, Mr. Mayor, I suggested that we not move on item one, which is why I moved it. because I don't think at this point we have an accurate description of what to do. We're not there yet, though. I'm waiting.
Get there.
I'm waiting.
Thank you. Regular agenda now, Mr. Saldira?
Yes, before we go into the regular, well, first we'll start with the consent agenda. I'd ask Mayor Jimenez and Board Member Gutierrez, do you have any conflicts with any items on this agenda? No, you stepped out to get a phone call. Mr. Jimenez, and Mayor Jimenez wasn't
No,
around.
none.
Okay, so we move forward. Consent agenda, travel for Executive Director Javier Rodriguez to attend IBTTA meeting in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Move.
It's in your folders, board members, as we said.
We have a motion?
Second, or I moved it, I don't know, someone else, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Okay. Now, Mr. Martinez, we're going to A.
I deserve that. Based upon the decision of this board, I move to table A to allow staff the opportunity to provide us with a new budget to determine where we need to make the reductions based upon the $15.7 million shortfall. Approving the physical budget for 2019 without having that detail is, at this point, premature.
You're making a motion?
So I move the table.
Second.
Favor?
All right.
Okay. We'll table A.
May I also provide some instructions to the staff that we, and I'm sure Mr. Mayor would agree and the others, that we get a detailed description on where the cuts are going to be across the board, as Mr. Mayor suggested, and that be referred to another joint operations and finance meeting prior to the board. I don't think I need to have that moved in a motion, or can we just do it
You give
instructions?
instruction, we're giving
Right.
instructions to
And
staff.
Mr. Board, if you have any other suggestions?
I think that, thank you, Mr. Martinez. I think that reviewing the 2018-2019 budget alone is not going to solve the issue, because if you think that you're deferring a program from 2018-19 to 2020, in 2020 you have a larger hole, so that you are not, in fact, the whole five-year program is now with an umbrella of a loss of, Randy, $127 million, more or less, give or take, so that the consequences, you know, the waterfall keeps growing. Next year, you have another big hole. So divide 127 million between that period of time, and you realize that every year you're going to have a problem. So, Mr. Mayor, as much as I would like to believe that you're going to find out of an operating budget of $50 million, that you're going to try to find a significant portion of that, of those $15 million, it's a portion of it will be there, but it will not be. Most of it will have to be by reducing programs, as Marie was suggesting.
Madam Chair, I never said that we're going to find $15 million there. I just said everybody needs to take a haircut, okay? That's all. You know, when you lose $15 million, just not put it in one program area, take a look at everything. Maybe you squeeze $1 million or $2 million, now it's a $13 million issue, not a $15 million issue. So that's what I wanted to do, and I know it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, but, you know, every once in a while, it's things we have to do.
You'll do that sooner than later, right? Thank you.
I do have to bring up an issue. We're required to submit a budget to the trustee by June 20th, an approved budget by the governing body by June 20th. If we do not, then we have to submit the current year's budget to the trustee. And I need a motion that the board is going to allow us to submit the current year budget for next year to the trustee. We have a June 20th deadline.
I'll move that for discussion, and then we can decide whether it's appropriate, just so we can discuss.
Open for discussion.
I think we should have a budget before June 20th. We may have to have a special meeting or something, but I think to put forward a budget that's the same as this year's, knowing it's really not, I think we need to move forward and go as quickly as possible, formulate a new budget, and then have it ready for your deadline.
Will we have a board meeting?
We'll have a special meeting before.
We'll have a special meeting.
Special board meeting?
We'll have a special board meeting, yeah. What we can do is, board members, we've done it in the past, we can have the joint committee meeting and advertise a special meeting right after that. We have the discussion at committee, and we could take the action board, and that's it. It'll be a single item or single item agenda, if that's the case. Ms. Schaefer, I have a question for you because of comments that we made at the committee. We've tabled this item A. It was actually two portions of there was two pieces to the agenda. The second piece to that item was the reallocation of funds to the general fund to address the ETC issue. Do we table all of it? Are we okay with tabling it all till the special meeting?
I don't think there's a timeline on that.
Okay, that's just wanted to make sure.
Ready? Move forward. Item B, MDX procurement contract number ITB 17-04. MDX work program number not applicable. System-wide maintenance of traffic services, $500,000. Endorsed by the joint FPP and OEC committee on May 22nd, 2018. Approval of supplemental agreement number 2.
Second.
Open for discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item C, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 18-02. MDX work program number 30056.051. Construction and engineering inspection services for civil infrastructure modification for toll zones on State Road 874, State Road 878, and State Road 924, $599,734.87. Endorsed by the joint FPP and OECI committee on May 22nd, 2018. Approval of negotiated contract amount.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, passed unanimously.
MDX procurement contract number, item D, MDX procurement contract number, MDX 14-03-B, MDX project services title, toll image processing system maintenance services, not to exceed $3,121,581, endorsed by the joint FPP and OECI committee on May 22nd, 2018. Approval of supplemental agreement number 1.
Second. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Passed. 0.
Item E, MDX procurement contract number MDX 18-05, MDX project service title, security guard services for the Dolphin Park and Ride facility, $1 million. Endorsed by the joint FPP and OECI committee on May 22nd, 2018. Approval of cooperative purchasing agreement.
Move. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Item F, transfer of portions of MDX parcels A3605-117, A3605-118, A3605-119, and A30605-120, endorsed by the joint FPP and OECI committee on May 22nd, 2018. Approval of right-of-way transfer to Beacon Lakes Community Development District.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Madam Chair, aye, yeah. The reason why we're not discussing, these were all at committee and we were all present to discuss it and, yeah.
Not on this, if you would allow me a couple of minutes to ask a series of questions, because just something popped in my head. We just passed 5% reduction on everything. What percentage of the people or the toll by plates would you consider to be non-residents?
Non-residents?
Yes, people that are just passing through.
I don't know. Steve, I don't know if you have an estimate.
I could get that for you. The majority, 10%, would be a high number. We have very little out-of-state users.
I'm not talking about the state of Florida, I'm talking about
Oh,
Miami-Dade. So, no, I mean, what's going through my mind is this, is that most of the people that take our expressways, probably, the vast majority of them that take it every day, have SunPass or have our SunPass. What percentage of the revenue that we get is toll by plate?
20%.
How much?
Roughly about 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
20%. So maybe for the next meeting, if you could determine for me, we could actually give a higher discount for toll by plate and keep, I'm sorry, a higher discount for SunPass and keep the toll by plate the same.
Okay.
We would actually give a better reduction to the average daily commuter. So can you equate that for me? So like maybe instead of doing 5% across the board, we can do like 7% for SunPass, and then the toll by plate be the same, and we'd still be complying, right? That's just going through my head. And that's for the next meeting. I know we already did what we did, but
We can
I'd
discuss it.
like to get that information, maybe discuss that at the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. We have one more item? We're done. F?
Yeah, we did that.
Madam Chair. Your comments, and then
I'm not, in the spirit of time, I'm not going to make comments. I think everybody has done that for me this evening. So we have an attorney-client session. It is 5:09, and we're about to have an attorney-client session in accordance with the Florida Statute 286.011 regarding the litigation styled Electronic Transaction Consultants Corporation versus Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, case number 1246272, CA40, in the 11th Judicial District in and for Miami-Dade County, Florida. The session is estimated to last 30 to 45 minutes, and the following people, myself and the following board members. Board Member Leonard Board, Board Member James Wolf, Board Member Mayor Jimenez, Board Member Maritza Gutierrez, Board Member Louis Martinez. MDX attorneys, Judge Rodolfo Sorondo, Joseph H. Sirota, Michael Ehrenstein, and Eric Hockman. Javier Rodriguez, Executive Director. Will be recorded by a certified court reporter, and at the conclusion of all litigation discussed, the transcript will be made part of the public record. All those individuals who I have not named should leave this room and reconvene in the conference. Well, you all can reconvene later on. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for being part of all the things that MDX does. We are very proud of what we do and what we stand for. The attorney-client session has now been terminated, and the members of the general public are now invited to return for any further proceedings on this matter. I believe you have a motion, Mr. Martinez?
Yes, I apologize, Ms. Chair.
No apology.
I motion to approve the MDX agreed settlement for attorney fees and costs in the litigation related to ETC versus MDX.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Thank you. Absolutely.